Hello. Okay. Yeah, it's already starting like this, but welcome to the podcast. Um, as some of the audience may know, we've been trying to cover a lot of the issues surrounding um violence against Asian Americans, both verbally and both physically, and like the heightened issue right now where it's like crescendoing to like assaulting our elders in our communities. We mentioned that with Frankie and Callan's appearance on the podcast last week. We had Isabella Tam, a good colleague of mine and former coworker, and just a good friend of the podcast. And we just been constantly talking about it. But this past Tuesday, there was an Atlanta shooting that killed six um, Asian American or individuals of Asian descent, and then two others for with a total victim count at eight. So I'll try my best, but I also have this document shared with our guests today. We have our election day cast of Callan and Kalani reunited together on another national crisis of sorts.
Pressing issues, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try my best to pronounce these names as best to my ability, and then probably not break down into a little ball of emotion. So just to name off the victims. And oh, by the way, this is also from the Washington Post article that describes the victims from the this past Tuesday shooting. So Delania Yuan, 33. She and her husband was decided to treat themselves Tuesday, and they booked a couples massage and were in separate rooms when the gunman entered and started shooting. According to Le Yen Davis, a relative, Yuan, was killed and her husband escaped. Um, sorry, Paul Andre Michaels, 54, is a 54-year-old handyman at Young's Asian Massage. He was an Army veteran and a family member. Sorry, and family members told news outlets about his service. Uh, Dao Yu Fang, 44, began working at Young's Asian Massage in recent months, according to Tan's friend, Hasan. Young AU 63, among four workers that's killed in Atlanta, she was also a mother, according to her family attorney, BJ Pack. Uh, Hyun Jung Grant, 51, uh, working long hours at Gold Spa in Atlanta. Hu Young Grant is 51, was a single mother and who did all she could to support her sons, according to Randy Park, 23. Soon Chang Park, 74, spent most of her life in New York metropolitan area and moved to Atlanta several years ago to be closer to friends, said Scott Lee, her son-in-law. She helped manage one of the spas and prepared lunch and dinner
You
sorry,
good?
for employees, according to Lee and local community members. And Suncha Kim, 69, worked at one of the spas in Atlanta. Kim, a grandmother who married, uh, sorry,
Take your time, dude. It's all right. It's a tough thing to get
married
through.
for more 50 years. A family member, a family member told the Times she enjoyed dancing and working hard, and a relative said, and then I forgot the very top. I think Shu Yo Jae Tan, 49, Thursday would have been uh, Tan's 50th birthday. So I just wanted to start out the conversation with that. I think a lot of this has been been on a lot of our minds. I think for me, um, someone that's been following and then advocating for Asian issues since high school. Um, it's just been very tough, I think. I just been very quiet lately because I've just been trying to figure out where do I fit in all of this almost. Is what I'm doing effective as a community member? You know, I've been doing this work for almost a decade at this point. And it's just kind of insane to just kind of see all of this, and I wasn't thinking I was gonna get this emotional, but now I'm just, after reading this, I'm just kind of I'm
Yeah, I mean it's an emotional topic. Like it's okay to
yeah.
yeah.
And as of right now, I think I don't want to say the person's name that did all of this. Just to mention that he was 21, a young individual, and allegedly did this because of a sex addiction. But given, you know, the people killed um at this time and at this juncture of the pandemic, and you know, the issues along the lines of violence against Asian Americans, how can we, like, how can we as a community not disassociate that? You know,
Mm-hmm.
you the police chief Jay Baker said, you know, it was his sex addiction, but like when you look at this and through the eyes and through the lens of an Asian American person, it's like, this hurts, you know, and this is you know, something that makes me both angry and sad. And um how I'm gonna talk to family for this, you know, like how can I talk to my students about this,
Mm-hmm.
that's already, you know, feeling the pressures of coronavirus already. So before I'm an emotional wreck, um how did y'all figure or found out about this information?
I mean, I was really late. Like I get all my like not to sound like one of those people, but I get like a lot of news from Twitter, because I follow like news organizations on there. And normally I'm like on Twitter like all the time, and I'm like refreshing to see what's happening. But I hadn't gone on the internet at all in a few hours because I was busy. And then I logged on and I was like, there was a shooting in Atlanta, and Frankie was like, he had just gotten home from work and he was watching TV and he watched like a news video about it. And he's like, yeah, I don't know what that's all about. So I kind of deep dove into it after that. Um, but I mean, it's sad to say that like it's almost not surprising to see these insane crimes like anymore. Like, not that it's not surprising, but like it just doesn't shock you the same anymore just because it's like every day you wake up and you expect something worse to have happened just
Yeah.
because things aren't getting better, and I don't know what we can do to make them better, you know.
Several days before that, we were talking about what had happened in England, when the female citizen was like killed from police. And so
Yeah.
we were talking about violence against women, and I mentioned before on that, it's like yes, this is an insane, you know, crime against women, but it's almost, we thought about it in the frame of color and racism, because it's like, I think literally a year and a half ago there was a freight truck that was filled with Vietnamese bodies in London.
Mhm.
And it's like, what,
Yeah.
like, at what point are these issues going to get through to you? Does it have to be bodies
Mhm.
piled up for you to care anymore? And I think that's the saddest thing, is just that it's like, it's getting to this point. It's like, for you to care, not like our guest today, but like for the public to care,
Yeah,
it
like for
has to be a
society
body
to
count.
care. Yeah.
Yeah, it has to be a body count.
Yeah. Where is
Yeah, Kalani, sorry.
It's okay. No, I'm just kind of like marinating in what everyone is saying. But no, I also found out through Twitter. Personally, I've been keeping up with a lot of the news since probably the middle of the actually from the beginning of the Trump election. I think I became much more involved with a lot of news just because I wanted to stay on top of information,
Mhm.
and just because, you know, there was a wave of kind of like false information coming out. So it was much better for me to be doing my own research for things. And so um, I think I said this in a couple of previous podcasts that I've been in, but I already figured that something was going to happen. And for a little while, it was like, when is it going to be like someone that looks like me? When is it going to be like something that I like? That I feel like people that look like me would get hit eventually, just because of how much, I guess, hate and like I guess was coming out for different groups of color. And so when it started, I wasn't necessarily surprised, unfortunately. And I think it's one of those things where it's very hard to kind of understand a certain group's like issues or problems when you're not a part of that group, or unless you have people that are in it that can tell you about it. So I feel like being a part of it, like it just like, and having all of this happen, it just, I don't know. I'm still in a state of like not really knowing how to process or comprehend everything so far. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think right now I'm just taking in as much information as I could to learn more. It's like this has been a process um for like this whole year, given Black Lives Matter, given everything that's been happening to a lot of our elders in our communities, and kind of just the racist rhetoric that Trump has laid the groundwork for. I always mention this. Trump may not invented Asian racism, but the fact that he did nothing, the fact that he just flat out, said, "Oh, calling it the China virus isn't racist."
Yeah, I was gonna
You
say he
know?
didn't do nothing. Like he definitely made it worse. Like he fanned the flames quite a bit. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's sad that like we had a leader that was like spreading this rhetoric amongst his followers, and we know his followers are half the country. So um it's really scary to have that, like, those people feel that way,
Mm-hmm.
like, and now it's like you're seeing the physical effects of it, as opposed to just the mental berating and everything, that like the
Mm-hmm.
racism that's so casual versus like literal violent racism.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like it's crazy, but it's so like, who could have seen that coming, right? Like
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
because he, like, it was intentional, like he wasn't being racist on accident.
Mm-hmm.
um
Yeah. And a lot of times he would try to contextualize it. Yeah, it came from the place. It came from China. It's just like that can also be true, but do you have to racialize it and put a target on us? When I work at my sister's donut shop, and the very first thing people ask me is like, "Oh, you speak good English." I'm like, "Hey, I was born in Hollywood. What the hell?" Or
mhm.
if or another one was like, "Oh, so which state in China is Cambodia in?" I'm just like, "What the fuck?" I'm just like, "Listen, his Trump is a symbolism of having it be okay,
Mhm. Like
giving
normalizing it, yeah.
giving the green light to be racist against other people, you know, and that's on him. That is on Trump for me.
Yeah, like he literally throughout his like, it's crazy that we're still talking about Trump,
I
but
know exactly.
It's never going to end. That's the
yeah,
lesson that
literally,
we've
like he
learned.
did so much damage on this fucking country. But like he started, like he attacked like every single like ethnic and racial minority while he
Hmm.
was in office. I mean, not even ethnic and racial, but like, like sexuality wise too. Like he rolled back protections, he banned transgender people from the military. But like it started with him attacking Hispanics, and he built his entire platform on that. And then, he went on to call black people thugs, and the Kung flu and the Wuhan virus and shit like that. Like the Islamic country ban, like he did everything he could to fan those flames of racism. And people accuse Democrats and Biden of being divisive. And it's just and then like they say that holding him like Trump accountable for his actions is like so divisive, but it's just nuts because he spent his entire presidency and before that being divisive and building a platform on it. But if you call out a racist on being a racist, you're the bad guy somehow. Like
Right.
I don't I just can't understand that at all. And the lady that like in Chinatown who fought back against that white guy who attacked her, I saw that video on Twitter and somebody, the first comment said like, oh, I forgot what somebody said, but someone else responded and say, so it's okay to use violence now? And everyone's like, yeah, when you're being attacked. Like, was she supposed to just take the beating? Like, I don't understand that. How are you the bad person for responding to rhetoric or actual violence? Like, you can't be the bad person for calling that out.
I agree. I wonder if like the reason why that response came about is because like Asians have historically had been pictured as like people who are kind of like subservient and not
Yeah.
necessarily speaking out. So I do wonder if that maybe is why.
Yeah, we talked about that last time too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
the stereotype of the demure, quiet
Mm-hmm.
Asian woman, and I think there's a lot of that that's presented through the attack on Atlanta. These are just massage parlors. These are not the Asian version of like the Black Panther movement or something like that.
Right, yeah.
These are just businesses.
Just people doing a job, like literally just doing their jobs.
mhm.
And I'm not trying to say the Black Panther isn't anything negative, but like
No, not at all. It's just
yeah,
a contrast. Like
yeah.
these
Yeah.
headphones don't fit me at all. I'm sorry. They're like
It's
I
okay. It's just
yeah.
I do want to just say this one thing here because of we were mentioning a lot of Asian female like leadership and like we were talking about Asian women in terms of like that the stereotype of the demure, quiet sort of stereotype. So this was according to NBC recently that there are now as of February research that started in March 19th, so of last year. So today is March 20th. There are more than 3,800 anti-Asian racist incidents, mostly against women, in the past year.
Yeah, I have that same figure up. Women of Asian descent have reported 2.3 times more incidents of violence than Asian men.
Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot to report something like this, and I do want to highlight, the fact that it's being reported and like women are taking charge and saying, hey, this is not right. And a lot of times when it comes to Asian businesses, a lot of women are kind of the business leaders, like for example, my sister is a business leader. She owns her donut shop with her husband. And then there's also like all of these different markets and places, like they have value, they understand what's going on and what's happening. And so I want to give shout outs and kudos to those individuals that are making that effort, putting their voices forward, and going against that stereotype here. So I just wanted to highlight that. And it's just it's both positive and also a little disturbing because it only mentions like it in articles. Any time an article cites stop API hate, a lot of the times they only talk about the metropolitan east and west of the United States. So like how many of these reports are like say Midwest, as you mentioned before, Callan, during your podcast, the podcast with you and Frankie, that you basically had a racial slur happen to you on the middle of the road.
Well, yeah, Frankie, yeah.
Yeah. And like the case early in the pandemic where a Southeast Asian family were basically slashed and stabbed in Houston. So like I'm looking at this number and I'm thinking, how many of those are like how many more do we not know? We have fourth, fifth generation Chinese American living in the south of the United States. We have Vietnamese American immigrants from during the Vietnam War living in the Louisiana Delta. We have a lot of Asian people living not just in the coast, but in the interior of the United States. So I
Yeah.
wonder how many of these are just not reported at all. And I just think that's kind of the scary angle of this too. It's like I know that this is a resource and it's a sorry, it's a
Y'all good?
self resource. We have a full house today. But yeah, it's a self resource, and I and it's up to us as citizens to report these too. It's not even in the books in many police departments to describe Asian violence against Asian Americans as hate crimes.
Hmm.
You know.
Yeah, I told Frankie, I'm so sorry for interrupting, but I told Frankie that like when it first happened, and I know, you know, the investigation takes time, but when they were saying that like, well, we're not sure it's a hate crime, he said it wasn't a hate crime. He said he just has a sex addiction. And I'm like, but taking that out on women who are just doing their jobs is a hate crime in essence. Like it, at the
Mhm.
very least, is a hate crime against women. Targeting Asian salons and spas is absolutely a hate crime against Asian women. Like I get it that like legally it takes time to define, but I feel like anyone with their eyes open can see that this is absolutely a hate crime.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Kalani.
No,
Kalani.
I think that's the problem though, right? We've had like years of looking at information that is very blatant and obvious and having it misinterpreted into different narratives and stories. And I feel like, you know, with this particular situation, the same exact thing is happening
Mhm.
where it's getting reconstructed into a different way by the
Hmm.
police, you know? And in some way, I guess in a way, you know, if the perpetrator is saying that, then like what else are you gonna do? But also like it's blatantly clear what this crime is and it should be
Yeah.
called as it is.
I
So
think it just comes down to the judicial system and what they can actually prove.
Mhm.
So I think, like, I mean, us personally, and I'm literally, you know, disagreeing with what I just said, but like us personally, we can easily see it and say, like, you know, this man very clearly specifically targeted certain places with certain people working there and everything. But it's like the police are so wary to charge him with a hate crime or whatever because it might be hard to prove without a doubt in court, I guess. And I get that, but I mean, the rest of us can call it what it is. Like the
Mhm.
rest of us as a whole, we can ignore what the police are saying for right now and just like it's pretty obvious to the rest of us, you know. We don't all have to go by like the judicial standard of, you know, alleged and everything. Like
yeah.
um but yeah, it's like it's a hate crime. Like it's black and white, it's a hate crime. Like
Yeah. And on top of that, like they're it's still on the table as far as I remember. And also we want to say that you're in referencing as the first kind of press conference
mhm.
of the Atlanta shooter. And the I wasn't 100% sure if I wanted to get into it, but I guess I think in my mind it's like maybe it is important because you know this is a person that at the time was representing the case.
Yeah.
The individual Jay Baker, just in, specifically said that the gunman at this point had a really bad day, and when I heard that, I was like, so you're telling me the person who killed 8 people is having a bad day? How about those 8 people?
Yeah, like everyone said that. They're like, do you know who's having a bad day? Like,
Mhm.
hello. Like what is I'm sorry, but what a stupid thing to say. Oh my god.
It was so dumb.
And it's like contextualizing and like already building a case for a white gunman that killed people of color.
Right, he's not a bad guy. He's just a guy who snapped, right? Like don't do
Mhm.
that. He didn't have to make a comment at all about
Yeah.
anything but facts about the case.
Mhm.
Saying that was so unnecessary. And it's very clear he's trying to build up that sympathy towards him and it's so stupid. I don't know if you guys saw the Onion articles.
Hmm. Go
But
ahead.
there was one that said like, "Oh, Asian woman knows what it's like to have a bad day and not kill 8 people." But there's one that, and I don't know, but it says sympathetic police know what it's like to have a bad day and kill 8 people, and I'm like,
Oh, yikes.
Yeah, I love The Onion, but damn.
But yeah, no, isn't this like also just like the best instance of what's wrong in this country anyways? Right?
Mhm.
Like they're just like like cops who are not calling it as it is. But you know, obviously there could be legal reasons
Mhm.
as to why.
Mhm.
But, you know, just putting it in the frame of a bad day doesn't do anything to help the situation. I agree with like Allie. You should just report on whatever you have as facts. You have no need to be making us try to sympathize with a person who just killed 8 people.
Yeah, like I get where he's coming from, not straight up labeling it as a hate crime right out the gate, but just like the other stuff was so unnecessary. So
Mhm.
unnecessary to say. Like there's no point to that. Don't do that.
And
Yep.
so several days later, so after the comment of the the shooter and the killer having a bad day and like contextualizing or like giving a voice to a white man that killed 8
Yeah.
people, the Georgia sheriff spokesman appeared to promote racism in a Facebook post. And I don't know later if I want to show the shirts, but it just said the shirt says COVID-19 imported from China. Um, China is spelled in the way of how the President Trump usually refers to that country.
Did you read what the sheriff's office said afterwards in defense of him, like in their statement with
They
where they
defended him. I didn't
yeah.
know this. I didn't
So
know that they defended him.
oh my God.
Okay.
Okay. So he, I believe it was the actual sheriff, and they posted something on Facebook, and they said that people were misconstruing. No, it was the Cherokee County Commission chair, Harry Johnston, and he said that people were misconstruing his comments. Um, but my favorite part is where he said, like, let me find the actual part, but he said, basically that here it is. Cherokee Sheriff Frank Reynolds, sorry, what a name, said
Oh
in a
God.
release statement on Thursday that they regret any heartache Baker's words may have caused, adding the community knows about Baker's personal ties to the Asian community and his unwavering support and commitment to the county citizens. And I was like, what does that mean? And then the article goes on to say that Baker has an adopted brother who's a Vietnamese immigrant. So basically, they're trying to do the whole, well, he can't be racist to Asians. He has a Vietnamese brother.
I was just saying, I hate that as a response to these kind
Like,
of
holy
situations.
yeah, there's no way he's racist, right? Like, Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And they're only referencing the things he said at the press conference. They're not talking about the Facebook post he posted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay.
That response is such a cop out to me.
Yeah.
It so is like he has personal ties to the Asian community. I have a black friend. Like, shut up. What the hell?
And the t-shirt is just so annoying because it's just like it shows that, oh yeah, there's a little bit of Trump in there too, you know.
Yeah, like you can tell where his motivations were with that, and it's like, how are when I saw the post, I went to Frankie and I was like, how do cops feel? Like, how do they have so much audacity to be posting stuff like that on their very public Facebook profile? Like, how do you think that's not gonna come back to bite you? You don't think that's gonna catch up to you?
Yeah. And
I guess a lot of the time it doesn't, but thankfully it did in this case.
And then as of late, I guess we're in the middle of our section about the sheriff's department and like the police investigation, but as of late, he is not gonna basically be the spokesperson for anything that's gonna be involved in this case. And then there is a current movement to kind of like say, hey dude, just resign.
Yeah,
Because at this point it's like you're showing a pattern of like, if things are going to happen in your community and this is your indication, this is your post, how are you going to do your job as a peace officer?
Right. Like, how can you be an unbiased person who supports the public if you clearly have, like, you proudly show your bias on Facebook? Like, if you're racist, at least try to hide it.
Yeah.
Like, geez.
I think
hate it.
Yeah, I think that's why the KKK had hoods.
Yeah, right.
I think that was something that Charlottesville, didn't learn.
Right.
But I think I'm happy that there's an unmasking
Hmm.
movement within these conservative circles, because that just means we'll see your face when you
Yeah,
do
like
something
I'm glad
stupid.
when they expose themselves. I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, like, how can you be so dumb?
Hmm.
Yeah. I like look back at like everything that happened earlier this year with like the raid on the Capitol and whatnot, and I'm just like,
We're in our third month. We're making it sound like we're in like our ninth month.
It's been a
I'm so
long
tired of
year,
Throughout
this
this
year
okay?
past
already.
year,
It's been a
2021
long
just
year.
started.
No, but like I
Yeah.
remember watching everything that was happening with that, right?
Hmm.
And everyone was just out with no masks
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
stuff, and they were just like, getting their photos taken by the press when they were in the building. And then afterwards, right? I'm pretty sure they were all expecting to get pardoned by Trump, and I'm like, he doesn't care about you. He
Yeah, like
only
he's
cares
out, bro.
about
Yeah,
himself.
he's gone. Yeah.
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 It's funny because like I saw so many people talking about that. Like you
Mhm.
literally have the perfect opportunity to conceal your identity when everyone else is also concealing their identities, and all of you don't wear a mask and rush the building. Like
Mhm.
what the? It's just the lack of cognition always like
Mhm.
stuns me, and it shouldn't, but it does. My
Yeah.
my my like opinion should be through the floor, but I somehow still have that like centimeter.
Your expectations for these type of things just get lower every single time something
Yeah,
happens.
like
Yeah.
so incrementally because it's already so low.
Yep.
Ugh.
Yeah. And I think even with a new administration, he's Biden has done a lot to kind of address the ills of Trump, but um well, I don't think this is a but statement, but the it's going to take a long time, everything that happened in these 4 years is going to take a long time
Oh
to
yeah.
address. And I don't think he's gonna do it in 4 years. I don't expect it to like it's not like oh, he's in, everything's good, you know.
Right. Yeah. Like the work's not over at all.
Yeah, and so it's gonna take more than 4 years to really address the ills of the BLM movement, the violence against Asian Americans during a pandemic, and
Mhm.
so it's gonna be time
Yeah.
for us to heal.
Yeah.
And I think at this point I'm just feeling too raw at this point, like very angry, very emotional. um but I'm trying my best to at least stay informed, or be the best resource for both family and students,
Mhm.
and try to come from a place of like understanding where your audience comes from, because maybe what they're coming from is very negative, like a negative
Mhm.
space. There are some families that feel that they've been wronged by many people of color throughout the years, and they hold those same things that white Americans do, but
Mhm.
understanding that there's been a solidarity within other groups of color and the Asian American community. When when the farm workers protest with Cesar Chavez, we you have Filipino leaders coming in and helping out. When Vincent Chin was basically murdered in Detroit, you had the black community coming together to call for justice. When sorry,
You
Joseph
good?
when Joseph Aledo was killed in the late 90s, because he was sending mail to a Jewish synagogue. you know um, his death was not reported as part of a hate crime too. um, Sorry, it's a little raw because I actually met the family of Joseph Aledo, and recently another family member of the Joseph Aledo family committed suicide during the I think around the pandemic time. So it's pretty raw. And so like the Jewish community came together and said, like, listen, he's also a victim of this too. So there has been a context of many groups, disadvantaged groups, coming to the aid of Asian Americans, but it feels hard. It feels bad that there are some people within that community that don't see that in that way. You know, that see that, oh, if BLM gets their way, that it's an affront against Asian Americans, or it's an affront with Latin Americans. It's a
Mm-hmm.
it's affront to other people of color. It's like, why do we believe that to some degree? Like, why isn't there more of a coming together of like, hey, like let's build solidarity? And I think maybe I'm just oh
Sorry about
it's a
that.
there's a train going through the podcast.
So freaking
Uh,
loud.
the like if we bring our communities of color up together, like that should be a positive thing,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mhm.
it may be hard because a lot of times I'm interacting with a lot of Asian elders that don't see that same way, or at least Asian elders that don't have the context of the civil rights movement of the 50s and the 60s, who are just recent immigrants to the United States, who
Mm-hmm.
don't know the history of Chinese exclusion or the Page Act. So
Mm-hmm.
like I think it's up to some of us, younger generations, to both learn and then also educate. To some degree, I always default to education because that's what I feel. If we teach the history, no matter how dark it is, it's like it's part of our history.
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles is the site of a Asian American massacre, a lynching. In the historical downtown area of Los Angeles, about 17 people were lynched from the Chinese community
Mm-hmm.
in the 1870s. So don't tell me that this is a new don't tell me that this is a new development in race and relations in the United States, because this is our history. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mhm.
some of us are born here, some of us immigrated here, but for those that immigrated here, you inherit that history too.
Right. Yeah. Like.
Mhm.
Both negative and both positive. We inherit that history.
Yeah.
With the situation at hand, it's like, or at least in response to what you're saying, I feel like, obviously with things such as being considered a model minority, which was originally created by
Mm-hmm.
uh, white people to be kind of like a divide between like people of color.
Yeah.
I think like those kind of situations make Asians in particular seen as somewhat of an other compared to a lot of other groups. And that, I don't know if that's in relation to just kind of like economic status or whatnot, but I think there's always been this kind of divide between like Asians specifically versus other groups of color. And it's always been kind of seen as like we're not like them because we're different. We don't really speak up against anything and whatnot. I guess that's kind of like the perceived image of Asians in general.
Yeah.
And also it goes without saying, there is kind of like a history of like racism within the Asian American communities, but I think, like I know myself, and I'm pretty sure a lot of the newer generation of kids that are growing up in the US are doing their best to educate people on why those stances are wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess without the context of being in and growing up in the United States, and if you grew up, somewhere else and then immigrated over, it would be a little bit difficult to understand those kind of
Mm-hmm.
descriptions of racism and whatnot in the United States. So doing our best to educate our elders about those kind of situations, I think, is very significant.
Mm-hmm.
But hopefully, I don't know. I just want things to be better. And,
Yeah.
in the end, like ideally, I I agree. I wish like we could all kind of band behind the situation just to become more united. And to go back on what you were saying about like Black Lives Matter and people perceiving it as only like being like good for people who identify as Black. I think that kind of perceived notion kind of goes through or is kind of prevalent in a lot of those kind of movements that have come up within the
Mm-hmm.
past couple of years, because the same thing happens with like um other movements that we've seen. And it's like a lot of those movements don't even just encompass the people that is described in the names. It
Yeah.
encompasses a whole bunch of people. You just
Mm-hmm.
need to kind of understand the nuances and stuff like that.
And I
So
just want to say this right now. It's just like, folks, please do not post Asian lives matter, please.
yeah,
Stop
no.
Do
Asian
not,
hate.
do not, do not post a blank
Square.
yellow square or any of those things. Those things are performative anyways, but also at the same point too, takes away voices of other communities,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
say for the Black Lives Matter. The whole Blackout Tuesday sort of movement was also very performative in their way, but also trying to make it Asianified or something like
Yeah,
that.
it's
Like
co-opting.
it's like, no, don't. You already did that with K-pop, all right? And we still need to address that, by the way. But like, let's not play that game right now. Like,
Yeah,
let's like
it's
stand
not the time
against
for that. Like,
violence.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Hmm.
stand, do things like stand against violence, educate yourself, know more about the history and the context of Asian American struggles, and like how another thing on a personal level, as I mentioned earlier, like the context of Asian struggle and other communities of color that either built solidarity or in some cases had bad interactions too, because of the model minority myth and because of that idea that Asians are like distinctly better than other races. Like that does involve violence, like that breeds violence against people of color. That happened with um during the 92 riots in Los
Hmm.
Angeles, when it was a Rodney King situation, but a year before, a Korean store owner shot and killed a young teen, a young
Hmm.
black teen, under suspicion of shoplifting. And you could imagine, all of those businesses were basically destroyed on model minority,
Hmm.
because we drive a wedge between communities of color, these ideas, these racist ideas that were a holdover of the 50s and the 60s, are really affecting us, and we should really deconstruct that, really understand where it's coming from and how we could help each other. Because if we all succeed, we all move forward, but if we put up these walls and we say one group is better than the other, it's like, I don't know if there's going to be a positive movement forward.
Yeah,
That's going
like
to be the case.
I wish I had saved it, but I just saw an article the other day about how like the concept of the oppression Olympics is like a tool used to separate minority communities so that they don't connect and band together to discuss like universal struggles and to attack the actual evil that is like racism and structural inequality. So like I think a lot of that with like older people is just that like foundation that's already been built and it's really hard to knock down because it has like been fostered for so long um, by the people in power to
Hmm.
keep other people down. Like white people will do anything.
Yeah.
Like white people will do anything to stay in power.
Hmm.
Um, and that's just one of those things, you know.
Isn't it so scary also that, there are like bills being put out now to make it even harder for people to vote in this country after everything
Yeah.
that's happened? Like, I find
Yeah.
that even crazier as well.
Florida trying to ban veil and voting. Oh my god.
May fail
Mail
in
and I do that all the time. It's so irritating. They want to ban mail-in voting even though like they the Republicans won and
Mhm.
so many people used it in this election. Like what are you doing? It's so crazy.
And
It is
then
so crazy.
and
Mm.
also in the state of Atlanta, where the shootings happened, they want to basically ban voting over the weekend, over Sunday. And the movements and the things that Stacey Abrams have like put in place, to get as many people to vote, because every 4 years you're gonna have a lot of new voters.
Yeah.
People, people don't stop turning 18,
Yeah. Yeah.
all of a
And
sudden. So
right.
yeah, that it's putting the kibosh on all of these movements to get people to vote, get the vote out, going to religious leaders, going to where the black community lives in or like inhabits in Georgia, and it is the black church. And
Hmm.
it's like, well, you're gonna police or like their the way that they do things and like stopping people from voting. I just think that's just after all that happened today and Tuesday, and I know this was been a movement ever since October to try to put in place like these voting restrictions, across all of the states, to some degree. It's insane that it's happening now after all of this too, that they're still continuing that conversation of disenfranchising people of color.
Yeah, I think trying to restrict voting is the most un-American you can possibly get. Like,
Mhm.
how can you be like, you think you're the true American party, but you want less people to vote? Like, yeah, you sure love democracy, don't you?
I like the idea that when you lose an election, it's not the okay, well, maybe the arguments, maybe the things that we're talking about just doesn't resonate with
Yeah,
people.
it's rigged.
Let's change our tactics. Let's change the way we communicate with the community. No, we're gonna stop people from voting because apparently if we vote more, then we'll never win an election. I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Right. Like, it's not that our platform didn't reach enough people. It's just that the election was rigged against us. Like, was it? Was it? Because plenty of you voted. Like,
Right.
gerrymandering still exists, bro. Like, what
Yeah.
are you...
But that's like the prime example of how deep rooted like everything Trump has done for the past 4 years is now, right?
Mhm.
Like, just the fact that, everyone is like, he should have won. I want to
Mhm.
argue that he won. The fact that we got our capital raided and the fact that people take his words about people of color so seriously is just a sign of how many people idolize and look at him as a figure of power. And
Yeah.
I don't want to say it like this, but the cynic in me is just thinking about it anyways. But I feel like because like of all of these examples, like you already know that for the next couple of decades or so, there is going to be groups of people who identify themselves under the flag of Trumpism, as they call it now,
Mhm.
Mhm.
and we'll probably just kind of listen to his word as gospel. I wouldn't even be surprised if there are people that held him to like up as like a god. And you know what? There are people that hold him up to in a savior position anyways. So
Mhm.
it's just, why him among all people?
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's like listening to him makes me want to put a fucking ice pick through my ears. Like, he's so frustrating to listen to, and it's like everything he says is so like juvenile and
And
weird. Like,
literally, was it days before or was it after the shooting in Atlanta? He referred to the coronavirus as the Chinese flu or the Chinese
Oh,
pandemic.
funny enough, I actually know the situation on that.
China virus, there you
So
go.
what
Yeah.
happened was that he went on a Fox interview,
Mhm.
and
of
it was the
course.
first interview that he did after losing the election.
Mhm.
And he said something like, "Oh, and the coronavirus, but I prefer to call it the China
Yeah.
virus." And
Yeah.
then, like probably within an hour or so after that, was when they reported that the shootings happened.
Mhm.
Like, I don't know how obvious it has to be for people to see how bad of a figure he is. I just morally I hate him,
Mhm.
and outside of being morally I still hate him.
Right? Like, even intellectually, you look at it and you're just like, you can't like understand it. Like, I can't look at him and like I for the last 4 years I've done everything I possibly could to not have to listen to him speak. Like, I listened to him speak so little, like maybe like 3 times. like in his actual voice, like I would never listen to it. I would wait 6 weeks for an article to come out before I would watch a video of him speaking. But like listening to him speak is just like such a weird experience because I'm like, oh my God, this is such bullshit. Like, everything
Mhm.
he's saying is so dumb and like wild. And I don't like, how do people connect to it? Like, I watch it from that lens, but then I think of like all the people who watch it and they're like hypnotized. And I'm
Mhm.
like, how did he brainwash you so hard? How did you get to that state? Like, I know it started before him with like, Facebook fake news posts,
Mhm.
but like, how did we get to that point where he can just say whatever, like literally whatever, and they're like, oh my god, he's right. He's right. Like
Yeah.
everyone else is wrong. Science is wrong. Facts are wrong. Donald Trump is the only person who's ever been right before.
Mhm.
Like he may as well be Jesus Christ because that's it. That's all that for them. That's all they have.
Yeah.
Like he's it. And I'm just like, I don't get that. I just don't understand it. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
When you guys were talking about Trumpism and how like there's still going to be several years and decades probably where people subscribe to that concept. Did you hear about the LA representative who introduced the motion to expel Marjorie Taylor Greene? I'm so sorry
Yes.
about the train. I want to punch the train. I don't know what I can do.
It's all good.
His name is like Jimmy something, right?
I did see that. I don't remember like reading about it 100%.
Hold
but
on, I
did
actually
Are you
have
sure
a
it's-
screenshot of it.
Are you sure it's not Ted Lieu, the California rep?
No, it was LA, but
Oh, okay.
I was like, you go, man. Like you go. Cause oh my God. And it won't work, but you know, I appreciate the effort. Like
Yeah.
thanks. Jimmy Gomez, yeah.
Jimmy
Of
Gomez.
Los Angeles has introduced a resolution to expel Georgia Rep. Marjorie Taylor Greene. I don't understand how she got elected. And when she was running, I was like I saw the news and it was like a one-off article and it was like QAnon supporter running for Congress and I was like 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 I was like ah, ha 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 like whatever, who cares. But then she won and I was like hold on.
Yeah, hold it. Yeah, I see it right here on Huffington Post. Also,
Yeah,
Huffington
good
Post
for
went through
him,
a lot.
bro.
Yeah.
I wonder if the situation has come about because of just like the mix of all of these different situations coming up, right?
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I'm pretty sure after COVID hit, everyone has been cooped up in their homes and like they're looking at the information that's online. And obviously, if you're not really one person to use online very frequently and have because of COVID, you kind of aren't as like I guess wary of those kind of like misinformation sites. And
Mhm.
also like just with the situation with QAnon and people being like this representative being elected even with her views about QAnon and whatnot, I do wonder if it's kind of like a circulation of information to kind of confirm their biases.
It absolutely is, yeah.
Yeah, because like if you watch specifically like one source of news and you keep watching that one source of news and they tell you one thing only, like of course you're going to believe what they say because it's just a confirmation of your beliefs, right?
Yeah.
It's so funny how social media tries to combat that with fact checking because my mom has a bunch of Trump supporter friends and they're all like crazy. And I went on one of their profiles the other day and she had shared some stupid meme and it was like a crazy claim. Oh no, it wasn't. I mean, she had shared other ones, but the one that she had shared was about the Dr. Seuss books being out of print. And it said like fact checkers have labeled this claim partially false because it was his estate that chose to stop printing them. And then all the comments, her and all her friends are like, fact checkers are such bullshit, this is all fake news. And I'm like, really? Like over Dr. Seuss books that you could Google right now? Like really? That's what we're like, really? Fact checkers are bullshit, they said. The fact checkers, the independent fact checkers. Like what do you believe in then? What do you believe? It can't be facts. Like you can't believe in facts because that's off the table for you apparently. That's too much.
And how crazy it is. It's a Republican idea to believe a business to do whatever they want, right?
Right.
To basically say, hey, free business, free market. But if it goes against your belief, then this is wrong. I was just like, Mr. Potato Head or like Potato Head or any of the like the Muppets and the Dr. Seuss situation. It's like those were independent companies making the calculation for themselves. Just like, yeah, this is something that we just don't want to represent. We understand the context of these images and how does it affect communities of color and things and things of that nature. And it was their independent decision to do so. But I see people on my friends list. It's like, this is fascism. This is like, wait, this is free market. This is what you praise for businesses to do their own thing. You know, nobody told them to do so. The last I checked, I never read those books as a child.
Yeah, right. I was like, what the fuck is Mulberry Street?
Yeah,
I was like, I don't know
exactly.
Any of this is.
So
Yeah. That's the thing though, like they don't know that it was the business's decision, it was the estate's decision, because they just hear that and they go, oh my god, like social justice warriors are so out of control, they're just running wild and they do everything. And I'm like, like no one's wanted any of that. Like when what was the thing last year where it was like they were changing snowman to snow person or some bullshit, and it was like we did a survey and asked people if snowman is exclusive term and if it should be snow person, and they asked like 10 people.
Yeah.
And like two of them said yes or whatever, and everyone's like, oh my god, the SJWs are out of control, they're so fascist and they try to tell us what to do. And I'm like, if you did even the surface level research and read the rest of the headline, like you would know that what you're screeching about isn't true. But they don't. They take those 3 words out of a sentence and they say, oh my god, the other side is the worst, so evil and so dictator. And I'm like, like
so what the fuck are you saying? Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
like, hello, like just read, like literally just learn how to read. It's not hard. Like you're 60-year-old man.
And these are also children books, so there are images, right? For the longest time I didn't get to understand, okay, so everybody has all this hubbub, it's an independent business. So for the longest time, racist imagery. And I was like, okay, what is this image? It's like I want to know what to see. Like, I guess morbid curiosity took its place. And I was like, why is Fox News is like going crazy over it, Newsmax and whatever the fuck the other one is,
OAN or whatever.
OANN. But like, why? Like, I need to see these images. And then when I saw that John Oliver thing, it's like, this is what conservative people want to keep, like, in print.
Yeah,
a caricature of a Chinese person,
and people were defending it because they're like, well, were they depicting different cultures? And everyone's like, it was just random racist imagery. Like, what? Well, is it culturally relevant? Like, is it ever to make a racist caricature? Is it ever culturally relevant? Like, oh my god. Frankie and I got into an argument one time because he was like, well, because I told him about the Super Bowl image, and it was the end zone and it said Chiefs, and then above it says end racism, and someone posted that and said, as a comedy writer, I'm distraught that I'll never make something funnier than this. He's like, but isn't it like honorary, like isn't it honoring them? And I was like, fucking no. Like you're minimizing an entire culture to a single stereotype. And I couldn't fucking, I was like, Frankie, if they made a football team and I could not even think of a Chinese stereotype, like I couldn't even think of one. And I was like, and they called it the monks or something, like I couldn't even think of anything. And he's like, I mean, yeah, I guess.
That's no.
Yeah, no. I was like, I couldn't even, like, I'm like, I just don't think about that shit often enough. And I was just like, if they made a Chinese stereotype team and they made a mascot that was like super racist, and I was like, is the Redskins racist? And he was like, well, I guess, yeah. I was like, yes, dude, yes, it's racist. But it's just like so obvious, and it's like, it's 2021. Can we stop? Like, can we just stop? I don't even remember how I got here, but the Dr. Seuss books. Yeah. And it's just ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You can still buy the books. They're not, this isn't Fahrenheit 451. Nobody's burning Dr. Seuss books. Someone said, oh, these are the same books, or you mean the Dr. Seuss that the First Lady Obama read to children? Was it bad then? And everyone was like, she read The Cat in the Hat, motherfucker. She did not read any of it. I didn't see a single racist image. And it's just like, The Cat in the Hat is still being published, bro. Like, what are you upset about? Really? sit down and think about what you're upset about. Like, choose, like,
Mhm.
make a decision and think about it. Are you
Yeah.
really upset? Like, are you really pissed? Or are you just like, is this an opportunity? You know? And it don't,
Thoughts?
sorry,
Yeah, sorry. I was
I've
gonna
gone on
say,
for 10 minutes.
yeah, I know. Thoughts on this, Kalani? It's just, I think what this means is like, even with everything that's been happening in Atlanta, it's like I think we're still gonna have to continue the conversation of race. It's like until we canonize the atrocities that this country has done onto communities of color, until we have some kind of measured way to speak to communities, in ways that dictate, hey, we done wrongs and we want to make them right by being honest with ourselves as a nation. So just, I guess, thoughts on anything that we just talked about, because I think it's just, I think race is going to be an ongoing factor in our communication. Like, I don't think it's going to go away in 4 years, or I don't think it's going to go away with Biden. There's going to be somebody that might be more sophisticated as Trump, although I doubt that. But right now, there may be somebody that's really conservative that may come up and be the next leader of the United States. That can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And to some degree, I feel like it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, no, it just seems like a lot of these issues are just kind of like people being like, "Oh my God, they're snowflakes," and then
Yeah.
they just start arguing about it,
Mhm.
But the just the position of like, Parasite winning and all of these things happening for Asians and being seen as like a good thing, it's amazing that Minari won like awards and then the shootings happened. It's
Mhm.
Yeah.
so strange. It's like the only time that like people of color can be seen as excelling is when it's at the benefit of the people in power, and like no other instance aside from that, and this doesn't even go into the fact that there's like a group of Asians that aren't seen as Asians because they don't look like this.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So it's just, there's just a whole bunch of different issues that are being like put together. Like, for one, I kind of hate it how like if you identify as Asian, you're seen under one monolith of a group, which, to simplify things, I think people just group people by how they look like, and that's another issue in itself that can be mentioned for another day, but
Mhm.
it's just there's just a huge pile of just instances of things that keep happening where it's like you take a step forward and for a moment you feel like, oh, things are going to be better, and then it just kicks you down and you're like, psych. You thought. And
Mhm.
then it just ends up not working out well. And like if I've never, I guess like this kind of goes back like a long time ago, right? But if there's any example of just people that will constantly belittle things that have like that people of color do, I think the epitome of that situation would be that one guy on YouTube that was like, why didn't Joker win over Parasite, when Joker talks about like the issues of people and like being like lower class and seen a certain way, and I'm like, did you not watch Parasite either?
Mhm.
That's what the whole time, like the whole plot of the film. So it's, yeah, I have a lot of pent up frustrations about like just how like people of color can only be considered successful when it's at the benefit of somebody else. Like, can you
Mhm.
just not be considered like successful just for doing something good? Like, just like we don't need the Grammys, we don't need these movie awards, but like it's just yeah, I don't know. I'm tired.
Yeah, like it's like worrying because it's like, is it like tokenism that they're winning these awards so that people can say,
Yeah.
well, there's no racism against Asians. Like, Asians won film awards. Like, Asian movies won film awards. Didn't you see Crazy Rich Asians? Like, shit like that. And it's like, like, do we live in two different like spaces where like you can't just decide?
Wait, is this the equivalent of like I have a token Asian friend. That way I can't be racist. But like,
well,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like with a society, like, well, Asians are CEOs. Why are all the CEOs Asian if there's racism against Asians? Like, what?
Yeah.
What?
And then even then, I think in the frame of like awards and how to be represented, like even when we have these conversations of Oscars so white, there are zero Latin American winners in that category for female artists. Like the only time we are awarded if we're in the side character. Like for the like best male actor, I don't think went to an Asian American. I don't know if Ben Kingsley count. He is a person of South Asian descent, but of England.
Hmm.
And then Hang S Noor was supporting actor in his film before he passed away. The and for Asian American films, is like the or like Asian represented film like Parasite. That movie got nominated for big awards like Best Director, Best Film, and certain things, but was not represented in individual acting categories. Like I
Hmm.
think between all of us, we felt that many of the actors and actresses had turned in amazing performances, but to not represent that in that way as like, hey, he is in the running to be best actor. And I'm glad that this year that Steven Yeun is
Hmm.
nominated, and I'm glad
wait,
that
there's
it's
another actor that is too, and he's just as great of an actor, but I forgot his name.
Riz
Yeah,
Riz
him.
A, yeah. He was also in if you didn't know, I think he's also in Motoko Shinkai's Weathering with You. He plays the detective as a voice actor.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. But yeah, no, like another example of this, right? Like about like a person of color can only succeed when it's at the benefit of other people.
Mm-hmm.
Is didn't Despacito get popular specifically because Justin Bieber was in it? Like it already was a popular song,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it didn't hit like American airwaves until it had collaborations with big
Hmm.
American artists. Like it
Mm-hmm.
could have succeeded just on its own. Heck, I liked it more before Justin Bieber was on
Yeah,
it.
like, what did he really add? It's
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, so it's just like these instances make me always want to question like the successes of people of color because like Callie said, is it an instance of tokenism where it's like, look at this thing. We can't be racist because this thing happened. Or
Yeah.
is it them genuinely believing that it's, you know, worth their time to give this whatever thing it is, like, I guess, a spotlight? Who
Right.
knows?
Yeah.
I guess it's fresh because award season is coming up, and like we
Hmm.
just finished the Golden Globes, and the Academy Awards is I think in April. Riz Ahmed he's an actor from the UK, I believe,
Yeah.
and he's nominated for The Sound of Music, also in an
Hmm.
Amazon movie, might I add. The weird thing about awards such as these that try to represent something that's subjective as art, it really just boils down who gets to vote,
Yeah.
in terms of these situations. I think the Academy Award, to its benefit, has been trying their best to try to address it, but like I think there's more work to be done. Like I think this year is a good example of like doing better. I haven't checked, but the person that won Golden Globe as best director was a Chinese American director for
Chloe
Nomadland.
Zhao, right?
Chloe Zhao, yeah. I wonder if she got the nomination of best director in this one, but um, I hope for the best for her because it's like years before, going back to women issues, is like that category has always been dominated by male directors, and it's like it really silenced many female actresses that turn director, like even back in the 60s and 70s. So I hope this is a good turning point. I do also understand that I think the person that directed The Hurt Locker, she won best director that year over James Cameron, and she was and they
Who
were
direct-
divorced. Yeah. Yeah.
Catherine
I,
Bigelow. Oh yeah.
yeah, and I want to add this last point to it. It's like, yes, there are to a degree there's a historical precedent that the Academy Awards will always try to right its wrong by rewarding best director or best actress for a movie that wasn't as strong as their previous work, but as like a, hey, sorry we ignored you. But I hope in my hardest of hearts when it comes to this is like we can just say, hey, like Chloe Zhao, that she is the best director in this category this year. She deserves to get this award.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
I mean, it just sucks having to second guess it. Like, do they
Mhm.
genuinely believe that, or is this just like for show? Because a lot of it, I feel like, is for show, just based on the fact that people in the past like 5 years or so have been like, "What's up with all the awards being white?" Like, people of color in general are not nominated, and people
Mhm.
started getting very upset about it. And it's just crazy because I mean, that was a relatively recent thing, and the awards ceremonies are like trying to write it now or whatever, but it took for people to be upset about it, like it
Mhm.
took people to demand for it, for them to realize that, oh, hey, like maybe black actors are talented, like that's just so crazy to me. And I saw somebody like people were arguing about female directors versus male directors, and someone, and I think a lot of the things I see are trolls, but someone said, well, if women wanted to get nominated for directing, maybe they should make good movies. And I was like, wow. And everyone, it was like very ratioed, like it had like 500 responses or whatever. But I'm just like, even if you like, you're just trying to be edgy or like funny or whatever, like how obtuse do you have to be to say that? Like,
Mhm.
you've seen every movie by a woman director and you've written them all off? Like, what? I also saw somebody, um, it was an ad for Minari, and someone commented and said that they were disappointed in the film because they expected it to be more like Parasite. And everyone was like, why would you expect that? And they were like, well, and someone was like, they're completely different movies with different themes and writers and directors and everything.
Mhm.
And they were like, well, I just expected the wow factor. It didn't wow me like Parasite did. It's not supposed to.
Yeah.
Like, it's so weird. You have two successful Asian movies and people cannot help but compare them. They expect
Yeah.
them to be similar just because they're written by Asians, because they're acted by Asians. Like, I don't know what it is that make people think like these two things have to be the same or comparable. Like,
Yeah.
compare Minari to other films in its categories. Like, don't compare it to just any Asian film you've ever seen.
Or
That's
understand that these are artists with different ideas of how they want to be represented. It's like,
right.
yeah,
Like,
like
Mhm.
one's a
two
Korean director working in the Korean context, one's a Korean American working in his context and his experience. So I'm like, how do you, like, I don't know, and I don't want to say like the general public, but like I don't know if the public just doesn't understand that film and creation, or like creating like an entertainment property, is not like a hive mind
right.
idea. Like we don't create the same stories every year.
And things don't get made if they're the exact same as other things. Like,
Hmm.
Yep.
you're not going to see another Parasite hit the award ceremonies because Parasite's already been done. Like,
Hmm.
why would you, just because white directors can remake the same movies 5,000 times over and over and over and over and over again, doesn't mean that every Asian film is going to be the exact same or a remake of the other. Like,
Mhm.
did you like, how did you go into it reminds me of my sister watched Train to Busan for the first time, and she texted me and she said, and this was a long time ago, but she texted me and she said, I thought this was a love story. And I'm like, did you go in that blind? Like, did you really go in just thinking this was going to be Parasite, dude? Like, it was so funny. She texted me about halfway through and she said, I thought that like it would evolve. I thought they would arrive and it would become a love story. And it was so funny. And I was like, why did you think that?
I'm so curious where she thought that, because the poster
Yeah.
has like him covered in blood,
I'm
and they're
like,
like,
And then zombies.
well known as a zombie film. And she's like, I just thought,
They'll be
I was like, where did you get your information?
oh. My
But
God.
it's like that. Like, did you go in literally knowing nothing, and then like obviously she was probably disappointed that it wasn't a love story.
Man, if she went in and was like, "Man, I'm in for a good love movie
Yeah.
tonight, honey. Like, let's just watch this and pick Train of Busan among all things." Oh, whew, that's a
That's
And then
that's a
she
type of
kept
train journey.
watching it, expecting it to become something.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, it is kind of a love story, but you know, a
Little bit.
lot of shit hits the fan though.
Yeah.
Oh.
But sorry.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, it's like, given that year too for Parasite, The Farewell was a film, like a black comedy of like,
Mhm.
or dark
Farewell.
comedy, sorry, a dark comedy on, like the issues of, the differences between Chinese,
Mhm.
community and the Asian American context, or a
Mhm.
Western context of like how to deal with, an issue of like cancer. And do you not tell, or do you tell a family member? And it's completely, it's a family drama, and like there is some comic parts to it, but
Yeah.
like that year Parasite was a thriller, and now this year you have a different family drama, and one that specifically revolves around the American dream, or the notion of an American dream in Minari. And you have a lot of directors of color depicting experiences that don't paint communities of color as always depressed, or always being marginalized, and the white person coming in and saving everything. And I'm kind of tired of those stories.
Mhm.
When you're always depicted as a group of people that always seen as suffering, what does that do to a community?
Yeah, right. Like your only successful depictions can be your trauma and not just stories that you
Mhm.
take place in. And it's like,
And so you have a lot this year. You have Minari, you have the I'm trying to remember this other one. Sorry, you also have the movie, the A Promising Young Woman. That one's a film of that talks about female issues. You have the One Night in Miami, that talks about, the struggles of black people, or the black community, but in the form of, these four individuals that really put forward the issues of the community: Malcolm X, Cassius Clay, or who of whom would later be known as Muhammad Ali.
mhm.
These leaders in their community. So I hope for the best that there's going to be a much more diverse themes in films that don't just paint us as just always suffering. Because, to some degree, as someone that's Cambodian American, and the first thing people would know me as like, oh yeah, you're the community that went through a genocide. I was like, well, not just that. There's that exists too. But like, we've lived in the United States, we've have our business, we have our things that we can identify with. But like, why do you, white America, think of us as always being oppressed?
Mhm.
We have lives, we have successes, we have traumas too, but why only expect us to be that one thing for you?
Mhm. Like sometimes people just need like a good kung fu hustle movie just to chill out for a day, you know? Like a good comedy, you know. There I think like there are a lot of different genres that different films can go to, right? And it
Mhm.
like, you know, we've dealt with like, you know, seeing the same group of people in like these major roles in films for years. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? But the idea of like different genres of films should be applied to like across all boards. You know, there
Mhm.
can be sci-fi films in like any country. Same thing with like love stories, you know. Clearly we've seen different stories of like, you know, class oppression, which all goes into the thing of trauma. So I don't think that's a good
Right.
example, but you know, it's just like there will always be different genres of films that different directors around the world will want to kind of dive into. And you know,
Mhm.
the notion that a film has to be the same every single time from the same group of people is just baffling. Hopefully, that changes. And I think when I think with the advent of Hollywood becoming much more inclusive of stories from people of color, I think we'll start to see a lot of different stories coming out, and in terms of like films, different genres. And already we can see a vast difference between, at least the top three Asian films within the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Crazy Rich Asians, Parasite, and Minari are all entirely three different films.
Yeah.
But not to point out the fact that, there are obviously a lot more films that people can explore.
Mm-hmm.
And, same thing with like, like a lot of like big films that have come out in other people of color communities. So,
Yeah.
hopefully that perception starts to change
Mm-hmm.
soon
Yeah,
ish.
so some of the films that I struggle to remember is the Trial of the Chicago Seven and
Mhm.
the
Mm.
one of the biggest snubs two for me in my mind is the Five Bloods by Spike Lee on Netflix earlier in the year, earlier in the pandemic, was one of the movies that talked about the black experience, but also um in terms of like the military, and something that I closely look into because I do have family in the military, and there of course there are people of color, but this is veterans from decades before.
Mhm.
Also a good performance by Chadwick Boseman, by the way, in that film.
Uh,
And the I'm blinking on this last one, but there's all of the U.S. versus Billie Holiday, the one of the lesser known historical moments in the civil rights era was the effect of some strange fruit had on both the FBI and the war on drugs, because of you know um Billie's Holiday's addiction to drugs, but also her situation. It's like this is something that she was born into a tough situation with less opportunities, and when you're always being put down by forces out of your control, it's just insane to me.
Yeah.
So I think you're right, Kalani, that these are going to be films and topics that we're going to explore in the future, and I really hope that we're seen as human beings and not just a community that needs to be saved by a white savior complex.
yeah.
So before we leave, I do want to just shout out some of the events in the San Gabriel Valley. um, and if there's any actions for addressing the Stop Asian Hate movement or stand up against violence, please check your local community members. Oh, is Frankie gonna make an
Yeah. Come
appearance?
here. Say hi.
Hello.
Hey.
Seeing you.
You can
he,
hang out.
he's now gonna turn into an avocado.
Yeah.
Honestly, if he face planted into the bed, no one would ever know. He matches
Yeah.
his
I know.
scrubs matches with the bed.
It's everything is like that. It all has the same similar color scheme. So
Yeah.
go on with the events.
So I think tonight, I don't know if we ever checked in again with this, but we may go to the action that's gonna happen in Almanza Park.
Mhm.
But here's some that's gonna be happening in the immediate future. There's a Stop Asian March, um, an action starting from San Gabriel City Hall to Alhambra. That's going to be on March 26th at 4 p.m. There is a virtual one,
Mhm.
different communities. So this one is the San Gabriel Valley Community Vigil and Healing. There's a virtual event that's from 12 to 1 p.m. But a outdoor or public event that's going to happen at Barnes Park in Monterey Park,
Mhm.
350 South McFerrin Avenue. There's another action happening in, I believe it just says Diamond Bar Boulevard and Grand
I
Avenue.
was gonna ask about that because I was like, there's no city for this one.
Yeah, so I wonder if this is a very Diamond Bar specific one, but I'm just not sure. The making a flyer 101, an actual address, please.
Yeah.
But this one's going to be March 21st. This would be this Sunday,
Mhm.
when this podcast would be around out, from 12 noon to 2 p.m. There's a Stop Asian Hate, I believe, vigil at the San Gabriel Mission Playhouse. This is going to be Saturday, March 26th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. 320 Mission Drive, San Gabriel. And then there's one at Claremont UCC. I believe that might be UC Claremont, or is that a community college out in
I
that
think it's
area?
probably the colleges of Claremont.
Okay, so that's going to be this Sunday, March
UCC.
21st, 7 p.m., 233 Harrison Avenue, Claremont, California. So these are the different actions.
Oh no, it's a church.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's a church. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
These are all the different actions. We would highly recommend folks to be safe. We're still in the midst of a once in a century pandemic. So whatever you're comfortable, many of these can also be virtual events. So please tune in to kind of help the community heal, because I think there's just so much that's been happening since March 19th when AAPI hate stop AAPI hate were starting their kind of like their reporting process to
Mm-hmm.
address the issue of racism and anti-Asian racism. And sorry, well, I'm bookending with two emotions. And Kalani also wanted to shout out the fundraiser for the in memory of Hyun Jung Kim to support his brother for basically food, rent, monthly bills for basically the tragedy that we found, a single family living in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And then if there's any GoFundMe's or anything else, I'll probably link them below. Please add, I know these GoFundMe's probably won't last forever, but it's still something. And I would want to finish up by just educating yourself by understanding the context of the Asian American experience from even way back when. Like even when
Yeah.
if your family has no context or interaction with the U.S., before this. I know I'm from a family that's immigrated from Cambodia to the United States, but like later, we still need to understand this history. We still need to understand the context. We still need to know that we have allies on that struggle in similar ways than us, and not try to basically play a game of, hey, I struggle more than you, so therefore you have to respect me. It's like, no,
Yeah.
it's not a competition of
Not
struggle.
a competition.
It's not a
Exactly.
competition.
Exactly.
So just it's about learning, it's about understanding. So I hope you take away what you take away from this podcast is us, I guess, still trying to digest what just happened on this past Tuesday. And so I hope you stay safe. And any closing words from our guests? I'm sorry, I was just gonna be like a
I mean, thanks for tuning in, and I hope that everyone takes the time to read more about everything that's going on to better understand and see what they can do to support their communities.
I agree. Just remember to kind of stay vigilant and keep informed on information and take care of one another. That's
Yeah,
the most important thing nowadays.
Mhm.
yeah, and be kind.
Right. So thank you. We'll continue our conversation of all of these issues. And yes, we'll still have fun. There will be fun days to be had in the future, but I think today we want to just acknowledge that we're feeling very raw right now. We're feeling very silenced or just in fear at this moment. So I guess whatever you're feeling right now, it's your valid feeling. Um, both negative and both positive. There are some people that take this and say like, you know, start violence against white people or something like that, if we didn't have BLM, this wouldn't happen, or all of these things. I'm just like, whatever you're feeling now can be valid, but just know how you're feeling and why you're feeling it. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.